Adventure Ho Illumineers, welcome back to another episode of DuckTale Dads. I'm Nathaniel. I am joined by Ryan and Mack and a very, very special guest. If we are the DuckTale Dads, this is the granddaddy, our dear friend Konnor, who started this whole thing for our group over a year ago, everybody. Welcome, Konnor. Would you care to introduce yourself?
We got him on.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed the first 5 episodes thoroughly, and I've been anxiously waiting for my turn to get on. But this is great. But yeah, as the host said, I started this a little bit over a year ago, and it's been an incredible journey, and I'm very thankful for the time that I've been able to spend with these guys. So, let's talk about Lorcana.
Yeah. So, Konnor, one thing we like to kick off, as you've heard on the prior calls, is what's new in your world. So whether it's Lorcana or life related, what's been on your mind this week?
Oh yes, great questions. My life is chaos. I have 16-month-old twins, and every day is an adventure. So we are in the process of replacing one of the 2 pairs of glasses that we have for each of the kids, because when I was at the mall this weekend, my daughter decided to yeet the glasses out the side of the stroller, and I just didn't see them. So there's a couple $100 down, and that's just kind of a pain in the butt, but she needs them to see, and so we're in the process of replacing those. But so kind of a headache, but overall these are pretty good.
Nothing like eating your glasses.
Yes, I get nervous every time we're in a mall and we're near any sort of railing and anything is in the little one's hands. It's just, oh goodness, is this going to go over the edge? Is this the time? Is this the moment? So I can feel your pain. I can feel the pain through the call.
Yeah, it was sad. I retraced the steps several times, especially stopping in Games by James to check out their Lorcana collection. Conveniently so, just because I was looking for the glasses, of course, but it was nowhere to be found.
As that game store is in the corner of the mall where no one walks by, you conveniently walk past it.
Absolutely, it's let's see.
He was just retracing his steps.
Yeah,
let's be real. He had stopped there at first.
Love it. Ryan, what's new in your world?
What's new in my world? Let's see. I was thrilled that after my experience at a local game store, Grey Duck Games in Maple Grove, Minnesota, that I decided that I needed to get another pack of sleeves, and I needed to get a single booster pack out of one of the open boxes they had behind the counter. And out of that single booster, I was able to pull some really nice things. So if you're really interested to figure out what that is, eventually it will be posted on our Instagram page. So shameless plug, follow us, give us a like and comment as you're following along. Mack, what's new in your world?
Yes, what's new in my world are 2 shout-outs. I'd like to give a shout-out locally here. Tyler and Vo, they assisted in helping me immensely over the past week or so with filling out some very important play sets. With the limitations of me being able to buy some set 7, they've assisted in filling out some of those set 7 lists as well as previous lists. I was looking for one more Rapunzel. I was looking for one more Beast Tragic Hero and another Robin Hood, just to name a few. So I finally have play sets of all the core cards from all sets leading up to this point, except for Tamatoa Happy as a Clam. That one is way too expensive for me right now. But regardless, I feel so happy to have all these play sets, and now I can truly feel like I can put deck building to the top of the list when it comes to coming up with new ideas with different ink colors. So thank you to Vo and Tyler.
Nathaniel, round us out. What is new in your world?
I can't think of much other than how excited I am that we have Konnor on. And I think based on Mack's comment there about deck building and everything, I think it's a great seg into something that we've kind of talked a little bit about on the pod, but not a whole lot about, but just the skill set around deck building. And I think we have no better to have added to the call today than Konnor. He has built some really fun brews that I've seen. He's built things that have crazy synergies. He's surprised people at weekly league nights with some really cool builds. Konnor, I would love to just step into your world for a moment and learn a little bit more about deck building after Mack makes whatever comment he wants to say.
I know. I want to provide some context for the listeners right now. Is Konnor, out of the core group of 5 that we mentioned of our friend group here throughout various episodes, Konnor is by far the most creative when it comes to deck building. So we wanted to bring him on the podcast as we're trying to start this series of common core decks for each ink color. We thought no better than to add Konnor and at least help jump through or initiate this journey as well when it comes to deck building.
And he'll be humble about it, but he is so good at this. Seriously. We're so glad you're here, Konnor.
Man.
I want to just amplify those previous comments and also just add on that I would describe it as adventurous. Konnor is very adventurous in his deck building, and that I think is a key skill in deck building. But Konnor, please indulge us and let us into your mind. What is your process for deck building, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, as Ryan alluded to, I am very adventurous. I am very eager to try anything and everything I possibly can. You guys are too kind. I do feel as though one of the most creative in the group is, it's a little bold for me, but at the same time, I feel like I am the most eager to get beat every single time with the same mix up of cards just to try and see if I could get 1 or 2 other random cards that nobody ever uses into the deck list. I'm a-okay taking 10 losses in a row just because I pulled off one shift line or was able to sing a song by turn 4. And I'm more stubborn than anything, adventurous and stubborn, because I'm wanting to get the weird cards, get them into the deck list. But to really start off about my deck building in general, it goes back to when I first started playing. Like, really, I don't even know if it was as I think it was just Mack and I when we first started. Pixelborn was still a thing, and I was just mixing things up. I had no idea what to do. I didn't know nearly any of the cards, and I chose blue-green because those are some of my favorite colors. And it was atrocious. I got annihilated, and I took every single loss and said, oh, okay, I definitely didn't need this card, or I definitely needed more of these cards. And so when you're asking yourself, what cards do you need, or what cards do you not need, that's where it gets down to the basics of characters, items, actions, songs, which are, of course, actions as well. Then you have your locations. And when it comes to the balance, if you're really trying to start off on the first step, really, it is you have 60 cards at least. You can have more than that, of course, but the less amount of cards you have, the probability of drawing those cards increases. But at the least amount of variance, you'll have at least 15 different cards if you have at least 4 copies of that card. And so if you're really wanting to see some of these cards, you want to make sure you have 4 copies. And so that's why I was really starting off with, like, okay, 4 copies of Robin Hood, Champion of Sherwood, or 4 copies of Rapunzel, Gifted with Healing. You have to have those 4 copies. And then as you're playing, you start noticing, okay, maybe I only needed maybe 1 or 2. And so you start monkeying with it and really changing the variance of how many characters I have, or how many actions or songs, and you start realizing as you're making these changes, all of a sudden you start realizing you have 18 or 19 uninkables in your deck, and that's definitely not going to fly. And so it's really just a process of trial and error, and heavy on the error, because of course there's going to be the top 5 or 6 decks that are getting to the top 8 of the CCS tournaments or set champs all the time, and that's great. And if you just want to play those decks, that's perfectly fine. But I find joy in brewing something original, right? It's very similar to, I know Zach Bivens is a pretty famous Lorcana player, and he really strives to use some cards that aren't very commonly used. Because I remember he took, I think it was Painting the Roses Red or something along those lines, where it's a song that gave -1 strength to 2 separate characters, but you drew a card, and he used it as card draw mechanism. And it's just the different intricacies around these cards is just, it blows my mind. And so again, is it the most effective way to get wins? Maybe not. Will you have a great time building out your puppy deck, your queen's deck, as I'm sure we'll probably dive into a little bit, or your Robin Hood, any sort of theme. I'm a very thematic person, and so I think that is definitely my goal around some of these decks. But yeah, I'll talk for an hour and a half about it because I really genuinely feel that it's just super super interesting and it's just a big puzzle. And so, but I'll definitely open up for some discussion here.
I do
Yeah,
want to jump
Konnor.
in and just say that if queens come up later on in the podcast when we start diving into kind of some core staples of each of this in color, that if they are part of your core staples for Amber, I may have some words for you. But I just wanted to throw that in there for the listeners.
Of course, of course. I am a little biased.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So Konnor, I am curious, as you're talking about this trial and error process, do you have any type of sort of general outline? I want X number of, 1 and 2 and 3 cost things, or
Yeah.
this number of uninkables. Like, what is that sort of general outline that you start with?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to think of the curve, right? As we've mentioned playing on the curve before. You've talked about playing on the curve where you're maximizing your resources, right? You're using your 1 drops, your 2 drops, your 3 drops. Because if you have a deck full of 6 and 7 cost characters, I mean, maybe they're not going to see the field very often. But when it comes to like the 1 drops and 2 drops, or at least uninkables to inkables, I like to at least have 7 to 8 1 drops. But it also kind of depends on the style of play. If you're ramping, I've used decks that only have 4 1 drops because the 1 drop is the icing on the cake. The ramp is really what you're looking for, which in that case you're really looking for your 2 drops, your T-pos, your sails, and then you have a bunch of 4 drops because if you're ramping in turn 2 and gaining more ink, you're not really going to be seeing a lot of 3 cost characters or 3 cost cards being utilized. And so all these little facts and tips and tricks are things that I've learned from the community over the course of the last year, which is another nod to how welcoming Minnesota has been to just our group of guys. And I use any league night opportunity to just pick the brains of some of the people around me and say like, oh, why did you put that card in here? Or do you mind if I take a look at your deck list? Because comparing and contrasting is how I've gotten to be where I'm at with my deck building. And so, to answer your second question, when it comes to uninkables, I've I definitely have played on the bolder side and ran like 19 uninkables, 20 uninkables, uh, but definitely with the options of cards that can help you get rid of high cost uninkables so you don't break your hand. I was able to get top 8 at the Monticello set champs with I think like 19 uninkables, but I definitely bricked hard in a couple games, and it cost me a couple heavy losses, which was sad. But ultimately, I'm leaning more towards like the 12s to 15 range on uninkables, especially if you're not having any option or opportunity to get rid of some of those uninkables with cards such as like the new Mulan, where you're allowed to draw a card and then discard a card, or your T-pos, where you can ramp a uninkable card without having to actually have it be inkable. So I think when it comes to those variances, I like to play it a little bit more casual now on the lower side for uninkable cost, but probably around your 7-8 for the 1 drops and probably another 10 to 12 for 2 drops, depending on what kind of deck you're playing.
So, Konnor, you briefly touched on this, and I have to ask for the listeners because we referenced the Queen's deck.
Yes.
And it's a bit of a teaser, right? Because the first ink color that we're going to cover in this new series of sort of staple cards from each color, talk a little bit more about what the color of ink does. How did you even think about, hey, I'm going to build a Queen deck that's, largely Amber characters, and how did that even get inspired? Because for the listeners out there, Konnor had brought this homebrew deck that no one had ever seen before, and was surprising people at like league nights and doing really well with it, and impressing and surprising people, I think, and it certainly surprised me the first time I saw it. I was like, holy cow, this is crazy! Like, he's drawing cards like crazy, he's getting big characters out super fast, and it just had this amazing synergy that was so creative. How did you even think I'm building queens?
Yeah, great question. I really stumbled across it. When I'm organizing my cards, looking through my collection, and trying to just keep keep things organized. There's so many cards. Keep things organized. I like to read into the small, uh, just little side effects of each card because you never know when something's going to combo or play well with another, or a new card's going to come out in a new set that's going to revive a new card from or an old card from maybe set 2 or set 3. And as I was going through, I had I read a card from set 5, Shimmering Skies, and it was the Queen, and it said Crown of the Council, warded character, 3 strength, 2 willpower, and a quest for 2. I was like, wow, that's pretty nice. It was 4 cost uninkable though, so I wasn't really super keen on putting it in the deck because a high cost uninkable isn't super favorable. And to be quite honest, a lot of these warded characters that I was looking at was because I had been playtesting against a very heavy Emerald Steel discard deck for so long that I inevitably just wanted to have my characters stop being targeted. And I don't know if you know anything about that, Nathaniel, but it's it was a friend of mine who was playing that deck. But either way, I was looking at ward characters in the little side chat or like the side context for the card. It says when you play this character, look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You may reveal any number of character cards named the Queen and put them into your hand. Put the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. And I was looking, I was like, how many cards are actually called the Queen? And so I was looking through and going on Dreamborn and really trying to dive deep. I noticed that between Sapphire and Amber, there was 28 cards all named the Queen. And I was like, wow, that's almost like half my deck. And so if I played this 4 cost, not only is it an on-play effect, but it's warded. It'll quest for 2. And so then I was like, wow, this could actually have some legs. And so I started looking at the other queens, and I noticed that there was 4 1-drops, there was 4 2-drops, there was 4 3-drops, and then there was 8 4-drops, and then there was 8 5-drops. I was like, that actually follows a pretty aggressive and nice curve that I could fill in with some other areas. And I put in, of course, Rapunzel to get, that's like the Amber staples. I'm sure you guys will allude to or talked about later, but it's one thing that I was like, this is going to add a lot of card draw to a very odd deck. And what's even better about it, like I want to say, let's see here, after those 4 cards that are warded, there's another 8 queens that are also warded. And to make matters even better, when I was looking at the other queens, trying to find out what would be able to be used in conjunction with this card, there's another 5 cost inkable warded queen that shifts for 3 that says for each other character named the Queen you have in play, this character gets +1 lore. And I was like, you know what? This could actually work out really, really well. And I kid you not, the first version of it, I've probably redrafted this deck 12 times, 15 times. Like there's numerous versions of this out there. But when I took it to League, I ended up questing, I think, for like 12 or 13 lore in one turn because I had 3 or 4 different queens on the field. And then I also had the Queen of Hearts, which doesn't necessarily count for the Queen category, but the Queen of Hearts card from the Into the Inklings, 3 cost Amber, it says whenever this character quests, your other villain characters get +1 lore this turn. And so I was just comboing queens and villains and queens and queens and queens, and out of nowhere, I would quest for 13 lore, and my opponent would just be like, "Oh yeah, okay, I guess we're gonna go on to game 2 now," and just kind of scoop up and start over because they just don't see it coming. And that's what I love. I love the shock and awe, the surprise, because if I see someone open up with, I'm gonna play a popsicle, and then I'm gonna banish, and I'm gonna play Bell, and it's like, oh, okay, we kind of have an idea what they're playing. But if you see someone drop a queen and another queen and another queen, you're asking yourself, what is this guy going to play on turn 4? Like, what is coming? And I absolutely love that.
I love that, Konnor. And to clarify one thing,
Yeah.
we did try to get Konnor to run this at a set champs because I think it would have been amazing to catch people off guard at set champs.
Absolutely.
But that Emerald Steel player, it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. That is indeed me. I will never live it down that I ran Emerald Steel. I want to just shout out Konnor because as I was learning the game, I built Emerald Steel thinking this looks really strong, and it definitely was, but it is kind of toxic. It's not always the most fun to play about, and he's such a good friend that he never once was like, hey man, this kind of stinks for me. Maybe you should do something else. So he's a great guy, great friend for doing that. He's trying all these different fun builds while I'm Emerald Steel through and through, being just a completely evil person. So, I very much, I guess, feel that villainy, what they are speaking of with this villain queen deck. But Mac, I think you wanted to color in something as well.
No, I was just going to say, the moment that Konnor brought out this Queen's deck, just to wrap a bow on this, is you definitely caught a lot of our local players off guard, and they were quite impressed. I think that was one of the first times where our core group of 5 really got compliments on how we play the game. So I just funneling your excitement through receiving all of those positive comments and positive feedback. So that was fun to see from that aspect as well. Like, that was one of the first times where we were like, oh, maybe we can play this game at a competitive level.
Yeah.
In addition to Konnor's wife kind of saying the same thing to us, like, oh, you're kind of good now, after a couple of us were performing well at set championships. But yeah, that was fun to see.
I also want to credit Konnor for introducing me to Queens as the very first deck I got to see someone else play live against me when I first started this game too. That was the very first deck I saw, and I thought, I have no idea what's happening. I don't know any of these cards. I don't know any of the other cards that I might want to be worried about outside of these cards as well. But it was fun nonetheless. So thank you for introducing me in such a drastic fashion to the glory of the Queens.
Yes,
on night one.
Of course.
Yeah. And guys, as we're looking to shift into Amber here, I do just want to, before we pop over to that, Mac, Ryan, I'd love to hear your thoughts on deck building process, what you do, what you're looking for as you're thinking about what is your 60 to 64 card list look like.
Yeah, mine's actually pretty simple. The way I deck build is I focus on maybe 2 or 3 cards that I've really wanted to try, and I start with a playset of those 2 or 3 cards, and build a deck from there. So mine tends to be blue and red, as I'm getting funny looks, and you guys can't see it, but from Nathaniel and Ryan here, mine tends to be red blue. So for example, when Maui Half Shark came out, I'm like, I really want to try 4 play set of Maui Half Shark in a deck. So I tend to focus on that. What's one card that I've really, whether it's aesthetically or the ability or in relation to a Disney movie that I like, I tend to pick those 2 or 3 cards and then just build upon that. So that's how I tend to do it.
I will say that as a deviation from where I thought that comment was going when you said it was very simple. I thought you were going to say, as Nathaniel pointed out, is it blue? Is it red? I want it. All jokes aside, my process, I think about different building blocks. So I think I need a draw engine. I need a way to draw more cards because that's the number one, most limited resource I feel like in this game. And that's something I learned from my significant other, is that every card game we play, no matter what version it is, what kind of theme it is, what universe it's in, if there's a card draw option, that is what they are gravitating to first and foremost. So that's what I think of as what's my card draw engine, how do I get more cards in my hand? Then secondly, the curve that Konnor mentioned, the 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop that we talked at length before, trying to focus a little bit more on 1s, 2s, and 3s, and then sprinkling in some 4s and ups. And then the third piece is like, do I think this will be fun? Does this look fun to me? And then is it some cards that I'm somewhat interested in from Disney movies that I like? And fortunately in Lorcana, and I'm such a big Disney fan that pretty much everything is nostalgic enough to where I'm like, yeah, this is cool enough. I'll play this. But yeah, so thinking about a card draw engine, thinking about that curve, and then just trying to sprinkle in a couple of other like heavy hitters or things like that.
I love that. So I think as we're kind of thinking of some of these deck building tenets in place, we can start maybe talking a little bit more about Amber as an identity, and then maybe some of the decks that it sort of usually builds towards, and then start getting into more of these staple cards. Does that sound agreeable, guys?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So I think on our very first podcast, I had first kind of talked about when I was orienting Ryan to the game. of like the identity of Amber. And I think Amber's part of the identity is like it's a healing color. So there are cards in that set that have healing things. You can remove damage from characters. That's one part of it. And a lot of the characters are weaker in terms of their strength amount, or sorry guys, what's the actual formal term there?
I think it's strength and willpower.
It is strength. Okay. Like usually lower strength, and then maybe they're a little bit bigger on the willpower side, so they can maybe take a hit before they get banished. But they're usually lower strength characters. And then a fair number of them either sing for a cost higher than what the actual cost of the card is. And we'll get into kind of how that plays in a second. Or they might be characters who are smaller, weaker characters, but they maybe quest for a high amount. They quest for 2 or 3 to try to win that race to 20. So I think that generally what we see with Amber is usually a lot of the deck builds kind of veer towards more aggressive, get to 20 fast. But one very popular build that has been around for quite a while, and Konnor I think has the most experience in that, is Steelsong, and that's a bit more of a control, a little bit kind of longer gameplay build, and it's Steelsong, but it's Steel with Amber singers. The one our listeners out there have probably heard the term Diggy Hole or Diggy Diggy Hole. It actually is a song. Fun fact. And that was a very popular deck this last set in Azurite Sea that was extremely aggressive in terms of just getting lots of lore really fast, using a lot of Amber characters. And then the other one that we have to probably shout out, doesn't have a lot of core Amber characters in it, but it is the Puppies deck. There's a lot of Amber and Sapphire cards in that, which was actually given a buff in Arcasia's Island in terms of its viability. Might not be a tier 0 deck that you're necessarily gonna beat tons of people with, but I think it's certainly fun, and in the vein of having cool theme decks, that is certainly one that you could build for fun, or you might see depending on where you're playing. Did I get, guys, any way to kind of color in more on that?
Yeah, I would like to step in. The other, I think, 2 that we see with Amber as well is hyper aggro, so typically paired with an Amethyst build, so a lot of low cost, high questing characters. You're trying to get as many as possible, and you're trying to win within 4 or 5 turns. And then the other one is the aggro discard with Emerald. There tends to be a lot of discard synergy with Amber and Emerald as a pair. And again, that tends to be more on the aggressive side, so trying to win and close out the game. Not as fast as the hyper aggro with Amethyst, but still relatively quick, in that 5-6 turn range, trying to close the game as quick as possible before something like a control deck or maybe a mid-range deck can take over. So that's, I would say those are, out of everything we've discussed, it's probably those 5 is something to keep in mind when pairing Amber specifically with other ink colors.
Yeah, one more thing I want to add on to that, Mac. That's a very good point. So when it comes to the different aspects of Amber that I'm thinking of course you have like the main 2 or 3 topics, but one thing I've noticed as of recent are some of the secondary or third tier effects that people often disregard when it comes to deck building. But when you're talking about card draw, there are different ways obviously you search your deck. You can, with Amethyst, you can bounce cards back to your hand and get characters back into your hands. You can ink them or play them in a different order. But Amber, I've actually noticed over the course of the last couple of sets, and then reflecting on some of the previous cards, is one of the only colors that has effects that brings characters back from your discard. And so that's another form of, in theory, card draw, because you are, with certain characters on play or as you ink or when you quest, you can bring certain characters back from your discard to your hand, which, I mean, you're drawing cards but not from your deck. So it's giving you more resources, which is another way that people sometimes just don't remember, because if you're looking for a card to ink, you don't always have to go to your deck. You can go to the discard. But I mean, with the new set, Arcasia's Island, there's also cards that now let you interact with your inkwell and bring cards from your inkwell to your hand. And so there's definitely a variety of things, but Amber is, I think, the only color. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the only color that allows you to go into your discard to get characters?
Other than
Characters, I
maybe,
believe, yes.
yeah, with characters,
Yeah.
other than shifting items maybe to your bottom of your
Yeah.
deck. Other
Yeah,
than
because I know
that,
like
no,
items
Amber
and actions and
characters.
stuff like you have your emeralds and things, but with characters explicitly, I think it's only Amber, which kind of follows that aggro rule, right? Because if you're playing a super aggressive characters based deck and characters being shoved into the discard, you can continue bouncing them back into your hand and continue to play them down. So,
It's a very
Yeah,
good point. Very
good
good point.
Yeah, I love that. So I think on that note, then we can sort of transition then into talking about some of these staple cards that have this Amber identity. I'll go first. I think it's the big one. It's the one that you see kind of at the top of the price per card lists, and that is Rapunzel, gifted with healing. And so Rapunzel has an effect that says when you play this card, you may remove up to 3 damage from chosen character and draw a card for each damage removed. So the reason this is a very powerful card is it is a 1/4 4-cost character. It's inkable. You can draw up to 3 cards but on play, so you don't have to like have her sit for a turn and then quest or do something. You can get that benefit of the draw immediately, which is extremely powerful, of course. But the other reason why this is so important, particularly for an Amber deck, is Amber as a color doesn't have a lot of natural card draw. So like Konnor was kind of touching on, where you're sort of pulling things out of your discard maybe as your way to sort of get more cards in play versus just drawing them off the top of your deck. That is one of the reasons why I believe Rapunzel has remained such a high cost card. It's very much an Amber staple, and it is, I think right now, going for about 50 each. So probably want to think about potential. I have none of these, by the way. And so I think the first thing we want to start thinking about is if you don't want to spend $160 to $200 to get a playset of Rapunzel, okay, what can you do instead? So that being said, I think Konnor just touched on a great way to do that, and that is actually where you use your discard pile as your way of replenishing your hand. So that could, one example of a replacement card could be the new lady from set 7, where if you are specifically running Emerald Amber as your Amber deck, you could then pull 2 smaller characters from your discard pile when you play lady, and then get to replay those either that turn or a later turn. But that is a way to sort of replenish using an Amber card with a similar cost, because that is a 5-cost character, shift for 3. She is uninkable though, so got to keep that in mind. Any other thoughts on Rapunzel, guys, as she is the big one?
Yeah, I mean, she's the big heavy hitter. Other ways, trying to think of different ways to kind of bring things back from your discard as other options. There's a Perdita, I believe, from looks like set 3, that also you get to play a character cost 2 or less from your discard for free. So if you have something smaller that you've got sent away earlier, you could use that. Otherwise, I don't really know of any great other options. Usually, you're probably going to try to find those options from the ink color you pair it with, I would assume. In terms of card draw or those type of things, where if you're in like an Amber Amethyst, you could lean a lot heavier on the Amethyst card draw option, since there seems to be a ton of them, and we'll get to that in a future podcast. If you're with Steel, there's some like here and there card draw options, so try to get those back. But otherwise, I don't have any. I don't know the game well enough to think of other options. What else is out there, like,
Yeah,
fellas?
I'll say Amber tends to be a color with all of these builds. I know we have Diggy Diggy, we have Hyper Aggro, we have the Aggro discard, Steel Song. Regardless of what choice you pick, it's very, very character focused. So we see a lot of Mufasa, Betrayed Leader, is another good example where you can bring, we have the potential to bring a free character on board with his ability. I know a very set 1 staple, is Rockstar Stitch, where you can shift him on there. And also the Stitch Carefree Surfer. Those interact very well with lower cost characters, and they kind of, as you build more and more characters onto your playfield, it just amplifies their curve. and to almost the point where it feels overwhelming for an opponent. So I just wanted to highlight that option or that as well when it comes to Amber. It's very much character focused, not only with kind of just aggressively building out your board, but with the singer aspect as well, taking advantage of very expensive songs with a steel song variation with lower cost characters as well. So wanted to throw that one out there.
Yeah, I know that I've listened to a couple of your episodes previously, and you've talked about Poor Kana, which is something that I think is super exciting. It encourages diversified deck building, different options, cards that don't usually get used, and if you're not obviously going to be able to use a $50 Rapunzel gifted with healing or a $200 playset, you have your Timu version essentially with Juliet de Madrigal. She's a 3 cost instead of 4 cost. And she's allowed to, when you play her, you remove 2 damage, and you're allowed to draw 1 card if you removed any damage. So you might not be getting 3 cards like you could if you potentially maximized Rapunzel's benefit, but at the same time, you're still getting some sort of healing and card draw, which could then fuel the fire for your next 1 drop, your 2 drops, your 3 drops, and whatever you're needing in order to continue to flip the board with the character heavy Amber.
That's a good point. So with that, I think we've really, really highlighted the importance of Rapunzel in a lot of these Amber decks and how that synergizes with almost every single one of them. But what other staples? I would say let's maybe go around the group here. Each one of us, let's choose 2 that you tend to see a lot, and let's try and not do any repeats. So let's start with Ryan. Ryan, what are 2 Amber cards that you tend to see a lot of, and why do you think you tend to see a lot of them?
Thank you for the kind option to go first, since I am the newest here. So I appreciate the mercy on that regard. I'll throw Daisy Duck Donald Date in there. She's kind of the staple, uninkable 1 drop, 1 cost character that quests for 2 with the 1/4 stat strength willpower stat line. There is a slight drawback, but it's minimal at that. Where whenever she quests, the opponent reveals the top card and gets to draw that card if it's a character, if they choose to. And then the other one I'll throw in, since it's from set 6 that I recently got. That's when I joined. It was the 2 cost Lilo. I forget what the flavor text is on that. But she's a 1/2 stat line, inkable, and she quests for 2, and then also has the ability that you could choose to play her from your discard at the start of each of your turns. And so that's kind of this like recurring resource option for you if you're kind of running low on cards. Maybe you don't have those Rapunzels in, but this is the way that you can constantly draw. It's the same card every time from your discard, but you can constantly play this card from your discard each turn as a resource option to force your opponents to continue to have that answer again and again and again for that 2 lore threat on your next turn. So those are the 2 that I'll highlight: Daisy Duck Donald's Date, and then Lilo Escape Artist. There it is, Lilo Escape Artist from set 6.
Zombie Lilo, sometimes called, because she
Yes.
always comes back from the discard pile.
Yes, they always can come back. Yep.
Nathaniel, you want to give it a shot now and 2 more?
Sure. I'll start with a 1 cost, which is the 1 drop Cinderella. She is common in some aggressive builds because she can sing a song on turn 2 as a 3 cost. So she is a 1 cost, 1 strength, 2 willpower, quest for 1, and has an ability that says this character counts as cost 3 to sing songs. So you are essentially cheating out a higher singer on an earlier turn. And so she can sing things like Let the Storm Rage On, which deals 2 damage, and then you get to draw a card. Or she can sing Strength of a Raging Fire on turn 2, where you could ideally have 3 characters already on the board and deal 3 damage to something, which is very powerful for a turn 2 play. So Cinderella, that's the ballroom sensation, is her flavor text there. So she is an extremely powerful card. You see her in a lot of builds, and she is a very important character in Steel Song decks as the early 1-drop singer. Okay, sorry about that. I do indeed have a puppy who finds everything. Okay, I'll stay on the singer route here. I'll steal some of Konnor's glory here, and I'll say Ursula. So that's the Vanessa 2-drop character. Konnor has ruined my game plan many a time with this, and she's very similar to Cinderella, where she is a 2-drop character, 1/4 stat line, 2-cost inkable, and she says it counts as a singer 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And sorry, I was trying to pull it up, but I'm not fast enough. But again, another very, very cheap card, but very strong card, particularly in the more song-focused builds. Is that Ursula Vanessa, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Konnor.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of add on that Ursula has a nice little shift line into Ursula, Eric's bride. Yes, she's uninkable, but whenever she quests, you see your opponent's hand, and you could discard a non-character card of your choice, which is kind of cool. So another little singer combo discard helps you with the aggro. I'm going to take it a little different route, right? We have your staples that you've talked about these last couple of rounds here, but when you're playing these aggro decks and you're playing these high lore characters, they're not usually the strongest, right? So who are you going to need in order to protect them? You're going to need your bodyguards, right? So I'm going to go with your Donald Duck Musketeer Soldier, 2 strength, 3 willpower, quest for 1, but as a bodyguard. So it has the ability to enter play exerted, so that if they were to challenge anybody, they have to go through Donald first. But not only that, but on play, Donald also gets to give another lore to another character. So before you quest, again, order of operations, very important, Lorcana, you can play Donald as a bodyguard, give your Lilo, your zombie Lilo, an extra lore, so she quests for 3 instead of questing for 2. So another little added combo that your opponent might not see. And then I know that when it comes to other bodyguards, granted, the Donald Duck kind of replaced this one, but I was always a big fan of Baloo von Brunwald from Into the Inklands. He's uninkable, 3 costs, which is not the greatest, 0 strength, 3 willpower, quest for 1. But what I loved about his ability was that whenever this character is banished, whether it's a challenge, a song, a be prepared from a very well-timed Mack Burnham play, you gain 2 lore. You gain 2 lore regardless. So it's always kind of like a goat from Amethyst, Merlin goat, without having to be a Merlin goat. So you can play it as a bodyguard, and you're almost guaranteed to get 2 lore at least. So I think those 2 bodyguards are huge, and often some unsung heroes in Amber.
Yeah, with that Baloo, really the only counter to that is a Hades to put, or Let It Go, to put it directly in your Inkwell to avoid that lore cost. Otherwise, your opponent is almost guaranteed to either just keep questing, or if you remove it, they get 2 more. So that's I find that a very powerful bodyguard as well. So I would echo that one as well. I guess my 2 are, I want to do kind of a lower cost and then a higher cost. I'll start with Piglet, Pooh Pirate Captain. I think this is very much on theme with flooding the board with a lot of characters, and Piglet just assists in boosting up your question ability with that. I think that ability is once you have 3 or more characters on board, Piglet gets +2 lore, and so it turns from a one questing character to a 2 or 3 questing character as long as you have 3 or more characters. So I think again with those aggro builds when you're trying to flood the board, that's a very powerful card. And then I'm going to move to the 5 cost side. I have never tried it, but I've always been interested in seeing how it does, and that's the Simba Pride Protector. I've seen it played a couple times, and I think that's another way. It's almost like a quasi bodyguard. I think that I don't have the flavor text, but it's once at the end of the turn, if Simba is exerted, you're able to ready all of your other characters, I believe is the correct text.
That's correct.
There's some sort of flavor of that. Yeah, so with that, it's very powerful in protecting your very low, your low cost and low willpower, low strength characters, and let them potentially survive for another turn. So I really want to shout out the Simba Pride Protector as well. I know there are a couple other staples when it comes to other singers specifically. Anyone want to take a stab at just like mentioning, 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of singers on the spot that we see on
Oh,
typically
Ariel.
played? Ariel?
Ariel for sure. She lets you search your deck for more songs. She's a singer 5, helps you sing that whole new world in Steel Song. She's the staple in a lot of those Steel Song decks, especially if you are playing the whole new world version. So yeah, Ariel for sure. Spectacular singer.
An Ariel with any songs deck, right? Like I think she's a $3 card right now. So being able to dig for those songs, I think generally Konnor in those types of decks you typically have. It's a 4 of, right?
Oh yeah. I definitely play a 4 of.
Another, I think, important song-based character that came out in set 5 is the legendary Naveen. Konnor, I've seen you use this to tremendous effect.
Yeah, that's I think really one of the only cards that lets you like play and then also sing simultaneously. It's a super nice combo.
For free,
yeah, that's the one where you really want to combo it typically with your whole new worlds, right? You want to play Naveen, like empty your hand. Like ideally, that's the last card or second to last card you're playing, because then the whole new world in your hand as comes into play with Naveen's effect. Yeah, that's a fantastic one. Granted, he's uninkable, which is is a bummer, but he's a singer 6, and that is a huge benefit to be able to play a song as he's being brought into play rather than having to wait for him to dry.
So for those who aren't familiar, Naveen is a 4-cost character, 3/3 stat line, quest for 2. When you play this character, you may play a song for free, cost 6 or less, because he is a singer 6. So you could play a whole new world and replenish your whole hand, as Konnor mentioned. You could play something like a grab your sword for free in conjunction with your Naveen. And he doesn't even have to exert to do it because you get to play it for free on play. So a really, really good effect there. Actually saw Ernie do this in the Lorcana series where he wiped an aggro board by playing Naveen, and then he got to play grab your sword for free or alongside it. That's, I think, another very powerful singer. I think the last singer I'd mentioned could potentially be the Gaston, the 3-drop inkable. He's a 3-cost sing full, and he's a singer 5. I think we sometimes see that in the song decks. Other than that, I think I would just give one last shout out to the big boy himself. It was one of the first Lorcana cards I ever saw. Konnor showed me Chernabog. You want to talk about Chernabog, Konnor?
Yes, the greatest or the absolute worst card to draw, depending on where you are at in your hand. He is a, what is it, 10 cost card. He's 10 cost, uninkable, 9 strength, 9 willpower, quest for 3, but the greatest effect is that when you go to play him, you pay 1 less for every card every character card that's in your discard. So if you're running a character heavy aggro deck, you can easily play this card for 2, 3, 4. But at the same time, if you draw him and you don't have a way to get rid of him, and you only have 1 character in your discard, you are not playing him for a while. And so it's really great when it plays out, and probably usually a 1 of, maybe a 2 of if you're really feeling lucky, but it is a very fun card to say, oh, I'm going to just play this 10-cost Chernabog for free, don't mind me. So it's definitely a big statement. More theatrical, maybe not practical, but definitely fun.
Yeah, I wanted to cheat that one in there because it's not necessarily a staple, but Chernabog is a 9/9 quest for 3 and has the effect that Konnor mentioned. I think it's definitely one in the more of the aggressive builds that you could potentially slap down late enough in the game where that's a very hard card to answer.
Yeah, a good tech card for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so guys, we talked a lot about Amber and its healing properties, its high questers, and also its singers. So that leads me to kind of a parting question for y'all, and that is, because Amber is known for its singers, what Lorcana singer would be most popular in your house? Is there a certain movie with some singers that is very popular in your house? Mack, you go first.
Yeah. My wife and I, for Christmas, a few months ago, we got our son a Tony box. So I don't know if either of you are familiar with it, but you get these little like figurines, and you can put them on the Tony box, and they have like songs downloaded onto them, and they play. His most popular one thus far has been the Elsa one. So we are very much in the thick of it when it comes to Frozen songs. Ironically, he refuses to watch the movie, so he just loves listening to the jams. And we reread the kind of the short 5-minute story version of it almost every other night before bed. So easily in our household as of right now, the Lorcana or the singer of choice in our household is definitely Elsa or just Frozen in general.
Good answer. Good answer. Yeah, I'd have to say that we try to limit how many movies and things we watch, obviously because the kids are 16 months old. But we have watched like 20 minutes of intermittent periods of different movies, and one that we've been playing recently that the kids actually thoroughly love the songs. It's kind of funny. They'll put their hands up, they'll like wave back and forth, like get super excited. Is Moana, and I just granted it's a proud dad moment seeing your son just bob his head to "What can I say except you're welcome," and he's just having a grand old time. But yeah, I would definitely say the Maui singing "You're Welcome" would be the popular singer, which is kind of, I feel like, not a top 3, top 4, but definitely in our house it is.
We'll get to this later, but when we cover Ruby. But Maui's a great singer in that color as well. I was surprised you didn't say yourself as the most popular singer in your household, but that's also conversation for another time. In my home, I think our favorite singer would probably be Minnie Mouse, if that counts. Nathaniel, what's the favorite one in your household?
I'm gonna kind of cheat this out and just say the whole family Madrigal from Encanto.
From a good one.
From the jump, our oldest loved it. The youngers like it too. It's just such a great movie, but the soundtrack is just so tremendous. So I'll just say the whole family Madrigal, we love it. But yeah, I know we are getting pretty close to time, so do want to just say a couple parting things. One, Konnor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes,
again,
thank you.
For those, we've said it once, we'll say it 1,000 times. Konnor is the OG. He got us all into this game. We appreciate him for doing that and continuing to bless us with fun deck builds and really cool, unique ideas like the random number generator for cards for decks that way, and just really keeping this fresh and fun, and adding a great human element to it because he's such a nice person. He won't tell the discard player that it's a little bit toxic, but that's a story for another day too as well. One last plug too, be sure to check out our Instagram page for some additional content from the DuckTale Dads. Otherwise, let's get the duck out of here.